Good morning to everyone who has joined us. Thank you very much. This is a GES webinar. Just give us a few seconds as everybody joins the room. Thank you very much. Morning to everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Sharon Constanson. I'm Chief Executive of Genius Boards, and I'm here to share some insights with you on leadership. So thank you very much for attending. This is part of a series. I'll give you some more insights at the end as to what the series is all about. I have a background in finance and in corporate governance and spend a lot of my time in boardrooms understanding people. I have with me a guest today, a good friend, George Woods, who has recently achieved his knighthood. Very proud of what he's achieved, very envious, but very well earned. George is a seasoned C-suite business leader. He's a coach, digital transformation strategist, and it's with those skills that we've called upon him to share today with us so that we can get that C-suite insight from somebody who speaks to them all day, but from a slightly different slant to the way I do. My space in a company boardroom is around behavior, leadership, boardroom dynamics, governance, the leadership of the board of the organization. George, in his research, he's also doing his doctorate, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, is more the coach mentor rather than the governance side of it. So he sees it from a different lens from which the person he's working with will interact with him and interface with him. So our objective is to get some good variety in the conversation today around the things that will support both our boards and our chairs to be leaders in their respective roles. Genius Boards, just very quickly, who are we and what are we about? We're there to support organizations to be the best they possibly can in the area of leadership of the organization. That is boardroom dynamics, it's leadership by the chair, it's communication of the group, it's understanding risk management, it's getting your corporate governance and your governance structures right, empowering the company secretary to be valuable to the organization. So we've got many, many touch points that we work with organizations and do a lot of white papers, training, education, in-house development. All of those are ways in which we transform boards to make sure that they adhere to one of the key code requirements, long-term sustainable success. That is what is critical for businesses to be here for the long term, is to make sure they are focused on that one element of our corporate governance code. Our corporate governance code is going through a complete revamp. There's a consultation paper out at the moment. So it's very important for companies that are in that classification of large entities, large companies, big family businesses, global businesses that are not listed, all going to fall within the new code, which technically up until now has only covered the FTSE 350. So much like other countries and other jurisdictions, the reach of our governance code is going to go much wider. And so the things we're talking about today are definitely going to be issues that are going to be picked up in the new code. So I call on all of you to listen, learn from the things we're going to be talking about. When I've got nothing better to do, I fiddle. And when I fiddle, I end up putting together images, diagrams, pictures, ways of trying to put my thoughts into some form of a framework, some form of logic that others can use to follow those thoughts through and utilize them as a point of reference or as a tool to improve themselves, to do some self-assessments. So the first one I want to look at is what we call the 515. This is building on a governance model that was created by Dr. Jeremy Cross, which was the 11 C's. We now call it the 515 C's, where we have built upon his original structure, his original framework, which was structure, demographics, attributes, and dynamics. We've now created 4 slightly different quadrants. But what we're looking at is making sure that you have to have the foundation of your governance right. If that is not right, nothing else on top of that is going to work. things like strategy, culture, alignment, focus of the board for the future are just not going to happen successfully. We need to make sure that the people we bring in have got the capacity and the capability. So do they have the experience? Do they have the skills? Have they got the time? Do they have the network? Can they bring value to the organization as a entity, as a person? Their attributes are an important one because that is the person. How do they behave? What's their character? What is their hobby horse? What's important to them? Do they step up? Do they stand up? Do they challenge? Do they have a competence to be a non-executive director? So those ought to be a chair in this particular case as we're speaking now. So do we have those kind of C's that we're going to bring to the equation successfully? We then look at the leadership package. The leadership package is made up of our chairman, our CEO, our company secretary, and then the committee chairs of the board. And together, this whole people bit that we've talked about, governance plus 3 areas of the people, gives us the dynamics of the way this board's going to behave. Some boards are extremely old-fashioned. We use the Bank of England as a very hierarchical, old-fashioned board, but then we also have something like a modern company in fintech, for example, whose board's going to behave very, very differently. But the issues that are important from a leadership success point of view for the board is what is the culture that's being created? Is the group cohesive without being buddy-buddy in each other's pockets and risking groupthink? But equally, are we challenging, but in a way that's still supportive of the executive? And to make these people, to create these balanced directors, we're looking at having a number of quotients. And the quotients you are familiar with is your IQ. What is your cognitive intelligence? Another one we know well is EQ, which is our emotional intelligence, our ability to communicate, to be heard, to be understood. Those are 2 very key leadership skills that we see, but one's a hard skill, one is a soft skill. So based on that sort of framework, and again, I've built upon a framework of Dr. Andrew Kakabadze, who had the 5 leadership skills that are required. And we then built upon that to give the now 11 skills that we feel are quotients that a director needs to have. Not every director is going to have all of these. That's impossible. We don't want that. What we're looking for is diversity in the boardroom. And that diversity needs to bring in a mix of these quotients per person, and then we get the balance. So we get different learning styles, we get different introverts, extroverts. How culturally intelligent might they be? How capable are they? Like, for example, George who's with us today, being able to deal with transformation. How capable are we at digital? Can we think strategically? Are we resilient? Can we cope with the trauma that life sends us? I wouldn't say that they are challenges, they're much worse these days. And then the other important one, which is a more modern thought, is bringing neurodiversity into the boardroom as well. And sometimes that neurodiversity actually gets that cutting edge sometimes to some of the things we need to do, some of the difficult decisions we need to focus on. And lastly, I just want to cover the area that we have to be careful of, particularly as chairman, particularly as a CEO and as the board directors. It's what's impacting us, influencing us, and causing us not to do the right thing. And there are plenty of them. I have another model which we'll pick up in a future session on the different biases that impact decision-making. We'll cover that in a decision-making strategy, decision-making session. But here we're talking generally about leadership. So what are the quotients? So we know our quotients of the mix of people in the room will create a culture. We have our biases and agendas, and there are 6 different categories of business bias that we have taken from the Codex. And what are people's agendas? I want money, I want recognition, I want to be important, I want to get a good job done, I want this company to fly. What are the agendas of these key leaders? We then have to deal with the visible and non-visible diversities. And this is something that we are biased, we do respond to diversity, and we need to understand how we respond to diversity and train ourselves for it to be the right response to diversity. We also need the right kind of diversity in our boardroom. Don't bring a mess. We don't need a menagerie of animals. We need a pack of dogs where everybody's different, but they have an alignment and a commonality. Empowerment, if people are not empowered, if the chair is not empowered, if the company secretary is not empowered, if directors feel that they are not given the space to speak up, we're not going to get the effective board we want. Thinking styles I've talked about, experience, skills and capabilities we've talked about, and personalities and behavior we've talked about. But these are all things that cause the leadership success of the organization in question. So coming back to our chairman, we need leadership skills, we need the ability to chair, and we need them to be supported very successfully by a strong company secretary. Bigger the business, the more important that role becomes. The things that they are going to be facing in this world is the newest one that's coming in, and it is not the end of the tunnel, it's more like the train, is AI. Good, bad, indifferent is going to impact us. And we need to be prepared so we're not in reactionary mode when these things start to impact our businesses in unforeseen ways at this point in time. So we are dealing with the unknown unknown. And we've been there through the late 90s when we were dealing with the invention of the internet and communications in the way they are today. This is another step change that we are facing. We've got the business world that's impacting us. We've got expectations of all our stakeholders. We've got the global challenges facing us. And we have the modern agenda of ESG, DE, and I. And those who know me know I turn them both upside down. We do governance, then we do our community, and then we do the E of ESG. And when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, we need a mindset of inclusivity first. We then have the right policies, and we then have an outcome of the appropriate diversity. And then we need to look at the characters in our room, the directors, their roles, their capabilities, their step up, their decision-making, and how the CEO operates in tandem with the chairman of the organization. So a lonely place, a lot to do. People think being a chairman is an easy conversation, easy job. You just have to pitch up and direct people like a conductor for an orchestra, which is an analogy I use quite often. But if you're any conductors, you know how much practice has to go in, how much work goes in to make sure you have a symphony as an outcome. We're going to spend some time covering these kind of topics between George and myself. So I'm not going to leave that slide up. What I am going to do is I'm going to just, as part of my introduction and the beginning of our conversation with George, who is at the moment going through the stress and strain of doing a doctorate, which is somewhat more challenging than I would have got to. Here we go. I just want to share this with you. And as he says, unseen, you are the privileged first to see this document that we are going to share now. And my question to George, therefore, is to give you a moment to explain who you are and to get people to understand the right you have to be in this environment, to be sitting here chatting together. What is it that you're doing with your doctorate? Share the content of the slide with us, which I just want to make sure you can see it.
See it, yeah.
Perfect. So you're doing your doctorate, and given the experiences you have in St. John's Ambulance, in various countries, in various roles, and in your mentoring and coaching role, and now, as though you've not got much more to do, in a specific market segment, you are doing your doctorate. Do you want to share a little bit about that with us?
Well, thank you, and just a huge privilege to be with you, and such a vital topic, boards and their interaction, and what kind of leadership achieves success now. And so background, you've already highlighted, but I think to say that I had a background in retail and banking, prior to going into the charity sector. And it's a place of deep fascination for me, and there's no other reason to do a doctorate apart from are you fascinated by the topic, and are you in love with the topic? And I'm in love with the topic. I am, you sort of fall out of love with it sometimes, but I'm in love with it. And a few weeks away from submitting a final submission.
Wow.
St. John around the world is a first aid charity and a medical response. And so in the 44 nations in which we operate, in steps a pandemic and a business, a social enterprise in the true sense of the word, in other words, generates its own income to sustain its charitable activity, suddenly finds itself not able to trade. Now, Sharon, you and I explored some time ago, were boards prepared for this? What kind of leadership prepares for something like this? And so the focus of the doctorate is a post-pandemic sustainability model for social enterprise. And so the Quad-Modus model, the four sort of quadrants of response, principally focuses on the connectedness of mission. Now, this doesn't just apply to the charity sector or social enterprise. This applies to the Bank of England. It applies to any corporate operating today. Why are we there? What is the reason for our existence? What is our connection to communities? And if you ask me where boards need to focus their attention, it's the reason for being and its connection to the external world. And you could use a pestle analysis for that, and we could spend some time on that as well as an example. But it's principally, that focus on that leadership and development. Where are we focusing our attention now? And if you think about where a chairman needs to focus his or her attention or their attention, it is around culture. Are we creating a culture that enables sustainability for the greater good? And so are we creating a culture that enables people to show up? We picked up on this the other night, discretionary energy.
Yes.
We either do what's expected or we go over and above. And the over and above is because there's a good culture that enables the over and above, and connection to purpose. Collaboration. How do we harness the whole system of an organization? And if you think of it in terms of systems thinking,
yes,
analyzing the parts which make up the greater whole, collaboration is a key component. Mm-hmm. These days, in a circular economy, because that's where we're heading, let's make no bones about it, the Gen Zs of the world are extremely focused on recycling, the greater good, connection to purpose, shared economy for shared meaning. Mm-hmm. That's where we operate. We, and in a world of globalization and glocalization, if you think of it in those contexts, shared meaning. And of course, brand. What is it you're putting out there? A chairman is responsible, a chairperson is responsible for that brand. The way that organization shows up in public, how it is represented. And if you ask me what keeps chairpersons awake.
Depends on your audience, anything from chair to chairpersons to chairman.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
I'm relaxed, whichever it is.
Fantastic.
I'm sure it's acceptable to our audience.
Thank you very much, and all due
respect. Otherwise, we just get tongue-tied and trying to be too PC.
Quite right, and of course, all due respect to the many diverse communities in which we operate. But brand, that's what chairs should be obsessing about. And of course, you've picked up on it here, Sharon, in your opening remarks around the governance structures, methods, how boards operate. And of course, it's all about development. And we're developing in a fast, rapidly changing world. You alluded to AI as one context, global warming as another context, post-pandemic, survival, sustainability of businesses, that tension at a board around how much value do we give to shareholders and communities, holding creative tension. So that's what this model expresses. It needs all of these elements to be sustainable. And so, so you're the first to see the Quad-Modus model.
And thanks for the honor. I really do appreciate that. An important place for us to be able to share with the market things of that nature. The things I want to cover today, and just to sort of tease out and to get from you the things that are important. Sorry, slide doesn't want to end its show. There we go. That's better now. At least I can read what I want to talk about. When you're working with chairman, what do you see as one? What is the greatest fear that you identify? They might not have recognized that fear. And what is typically a blind spot that you need to identify for them so that you unlock two potential ineffective areas of behavior and leadership to make them the best chair they can be? Can you help on some of your experiences in this space?
Sorry about the London traffic.
We can't hear it, it's fine.
Oh, good, marvelous.
Microphone is designed not to pick it up.
That's brilliant. There's the fear of failure. Nobody
I
wants.
see that as well. I see it all the time.
And good old Maslow's hierarchy of need. The moment you think you're on a route to failure, survival becomes key. And survival mechanisms and survival tactical interventions. And there would be a tendency to want to intervene yourself. And this is where boards and executive are in creative and healthy or unhealthy tension with each other, because you would have executive overreach, or are you sufficiently structured to test assumptions? And I think we started to pick up on this a little while ago. What kind of research a board has the right to demand? So fear, I think, would be one of those sort of areas to draw out. Every chair wants to leave a legacy. Nobody wants to leave a legacy that says, well, that chair managed to drive a company into oblivion, or indeed a charity for that matter. And so legacy, and so legacy is a tension there as well. And the liberating thing is making sure that that legacy is a shared legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so shared mission, shared economy, as we referred to in the model previously, what does that look like in the context of healthy creative tension? So I would draw that out. And the really great chairs are those who are reflective leaders. And I'm glad you had emotional maturity there, or emotional quotient. A reflective leader understands that 90% of the time they're wrong.
Interesting.
Because you and I are wired by our own biases, and filters through which we see the world.
Yes.
And so one of the most liberating things you can do for yourself is acknowledge most of the time you're going to be wrong.
So in other words, our metacognitive bias, our highest risk of thinking we don't have a bias, is the one that we actually just have to recognize we are. Full stop.
100%. And I referred to this a little while ago, but Ralph Debelli, one of the greatest liberating books you could ever read, is The Art of Thinking Clearly. And the basic premise of that book is that we tend not to think clearly. And as human beings, we form patterns where there are no patterns, because that's how we're wired.
Yes.
And it's
part of that survival.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you can go into the cognitive processes and the amygdala brain and the reptilian brain. You can go into all of those things, which of course is a fascinating area as well.
It is, absolutely. And what do you think is a blind spot that they have? And I can potentially share with you some of the ones I see as blind spots as a chair that they have. And for example, if I do a board evaluation, the company secretary will get the closest to the outcome I do. The most recent female director will be the harshest critic of everything, including herself. And And the chair will have rose-tinted glasses on and will see that everything is actually quite hunky-dory. And if you can just arrange for me to have a few less papers to read, that might be great. But otherwise, I'm ticking a box. I'm exaggerating, but I do come across a number of chairs in that space. So the blind spot I'm referring to is absorbing external knowledge and recognizing there's other ways of doing things other than your instinctive way of chairing that board that could bring value, and you, to your point, then leave a stronger legacy, for example. Now, that's a blind spot I see. Some examples that you see?
Yeah, I suppose, as you were sort of broadening out on the topic, the first response I have to that is the chair is supposed to know. And the chair has an anxiety that, well, clearly I'm the chair. I must know how to respond in all instances. And again, the liberating factor here is recognizing you don't have to. What is more important is engaging a higher self and EQ and reading the room.
Chairing the meeting.
Chairing the meeting and giving space, managed space, for reflection and to draw out all perspectives. And that applies not just in a boardroom, it applies in life, doesn't it? And the other thing that sort of comes to me is not being scared to peer review yourself against other boards. And I learned this very early on, draw on the company secretary and say, what do you think?
Where can we improve?
Exactly.
What should I learn?
Correct.
What should I do differently? And so often we will help company secretaries to sit in a position relative to the chair and that meeting room design that you end up with, whether it's a Zoom room, Teams room, or a physical room, square table, oblong table, whatever, and teach them to have eye contact.
Correct.
And learn signals that they use to communicate with each other about the room. So that works far better than sending a WhatsApp and they both disappear in the WhatsApp and then they both smile and everyone says, oh, they're talking to each other, which doesn't work well because it's so transparent what's just occurred. So it's more difficult in a Zoom environment to have body language that is not as visible because it's more visible to everybody. So you got to be careful how you set your signals in that environment. But the most important is that the chair doesn't have to think they're at the top of the pyramid and 100% alone. They feel it. They are, if they're silly enough. But if they're clever, they can take their deputy, the SID, the COSEC, the CEO, and create a triumvirate effectively at the top of the organization. Have each other's backs. I mean, I find a SID extremely valuable for myself and for boards I work with.
If I may sort of just build on that ever so slightly. So again, as you were talking, the most effective chairs are those who are humble. And
I agree with you.
Yeah. And humility seems counterintuitive in a world that is ego-driven, isn't it? And results-driven. But actually, I think the New World Order is exactly this. It's about leaders who are aspirational, humble, know they don't know the full story, and are able to draw on others.
And learn.
And learn.
Learn on that journey all the time.
Yeah. And board development is so important, isn't it, in that same context? And
Pulling on your model, yes.
Yeah, and so what is it you want your board to do? What is it you expect around behavior? Developing a set of values everyone subscribes to, i.e. don't WhatsApp each other in the meeting. Have the freedom and the openness to be able to express your points of disagreement and creative tension.
And I agree with you 100% on that engagement strategy that you need. And the aspect of where the chair is in a position where they are at that moment in time chairing the meeting. but they are drawing on others to work out what is the best decisions, and it's not their decision. They are using that knowledge to then mentor and coach the CEO in their regular calls, but again, is not the expert telling the CEO what to do. It's a coach when you think about it.
Yeah.
I'm coaching you all, I'm chairing you all to be the best you can. And that is, and it's not trying to be the expert in everything and tell people what to do. I worked with a big government organization and the chair kept saying, you must do this. And the poor CEO was saying, really? And in the feedback, I just shared with him, I said, you're going to lose your CEO. Well, why would that happen? I said, you're telling him what to do. Well, I know better. So that's not the point. That's your opinion. Rightly or wrongly, I'm not discussing that. But if you cut his wings off, at least it will clip them, he will leave. And under the circumstances, he's going to leave. He said, he'll never leave. Mark my words, he'll never leave. I knew nothing about whether he would or wouldn't. I just knew that as a character, he will. I think it was 7 months, he was gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, there's something about, you know, a chair saying, we are resolved and we carry forward emotion.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? We are resolved. Because we understand that a board needs to agree, disagree, create a healthy tension. Executive needs to be enabled in much the way you've just described to perform, to fulfill its role. But when they leave that boardroom, everyone is resolved.
Yes. So it's the majority that we take upon as the outcome.
Correct.
Not 100% vote.
Exactly.
A board I worked with wanted 100% vote on something, and 2 of the directors just were not there. They just disagreed fundamentally. And eventually, out of bullying tactics, they said, all right, we agree.
Mm.
It took 2.5 years to make that decision, and it was the wrong one.
Mm.
They should have made the right one 2.5 years before, listening to the counter vote, who had a much better idea. But the chair had his view. That was the way it was going to happen.
And this goes back to, you know, one of the previous points around the quality of information that a board receives.
Yes.
And the testing of different perspectives. You know, you talk about blind spots. It's being aware that there are blind spots. And actually opening and transparently asking the question, what are our blind spots? What are we not seeing here?
And somebody being that spanner who puts it in the wheel, and you all think, oh my God, what's going to happen? And life is sort of pretty turned up for a moment. But if you don't have that someone who, and it can't always be the chair because they are chairing the meeting. They can do it with the CEO. Absolutely, they can be challenging. But if you don't have somebody in the board meeting, like the 12 Angry Men done with Henry Fonda, where one person said, hold on, it's not beyond reasonable doubt. Let's talk. And once they debated it, the others thought, okay, we're here to think this one through. Let's make the right decision rather than the quickest, simplest, most obvious last man standing style decision that our biases tend to get us to do, which gets in the way. Just a quick one. We're talking quite a bit about the board as well as the leadership by the chair. How can a chair engage themselves and the support of externals? Because that's where I think the point I wanted to make a moment ago is boards need to reach out to expertise they don't have, expertise that don't exist within the business. Sometimes you want external because it's fresh, it's not biased, it's not at risk, it can be honest, it can be more forthright. You're paying them, you listen. And all these reasons why we should use externals. How do we get to support the collective, the board, the team, to step up and be culturally challenging leadership the best it can be?
Maybe back to one of the previous expressions, I'm the chair, therefore I must know. And therefore I no longer need any coaching, I no longer need any mentoring. That's the blind spot.
We see it so often. Oh, absolutely. We see it so often.
And part of it is how we've set up, how we're wired as society and our expectations. Clearly, if you're the chair, you must know it all. You must be, you've got the kudos. I mean, you've worked your way up to that position. You've served on many boards, but actually, that is the major blind spot, is recognizing that development and continuous education is just a fact of life. It's not a once-off process. It's a continuum of life, and accepting that the world has changed so much. I mean, back to the doctorate, if I may, the amount of research that surfaced in the last 2 years has made it such a dream to research, because there is so much thought going into leadership development. What kind of leaders navigate a pandemic, navigate through a crisis, etc. So, so coaching, I think, is key. And we alluded to peer review, like-minded industries, or indeed completely different industries, because people are people. The techniques are still the same.
Identical, whether it's charity or a FTSE 1.
Correct. And the other thing, is creating a sense of belonging. Michael Owen wrote a beautiful book called Belonging. You ever have a weekend to yourself? Michael Owen, Belonging. And I think as culture architects, if you think of a chair and that board, they're culture architects, aren't they? That's what they're doing.
Yeah. Nice way of describing them.
Yeah, to architect a place of belonging for all communities, constituencies. So yeah, that would be a recommendation.
That thought process that you came through just a little bit earlier, where you're saying the chair must know, believes he knows, others in a hierarchical structure make the assumption, or at least defer to that belief system. I witnessed this once when I was doing a board evaluation of a listed investment trust. And very senior board, everybody was of a superb ilk, no question about it. They were all a fully non-executive board, and you had your the managers coming in for the investments, and you had the company secretary team, their COSEC, who's also external. So you had the two external parties. And when I did the interview of one of the directors who was a senior partner in one of your Magic Circle legal organizations in the City of London. So has the kudos for having got there. You don't get there not knowing what you're doing. And he vehemently disagreed with a new investment strategy that the managers have put forward, and had got the chair to agree to survive pre-conversations and everything. And this has been festering for a while. Anyway, they put it to vote. I witnessed the meeting and it got put through, and not a peep out of legal, sir. So I phoned him up afterwards and I said to him, I'm now really confused. Did I misunderstand our conversation? He said, I didn't think you agreed. He said, no, I don't agree. I think it's completely wrong. So then why didn't you say anything? He said, he's the chair. He wants to make the decisions. I'll just go along. I said, where did you get that as being your fiduciary duty to this organization? He got both barrels. It is incredible how that defer to somebody else's more senior knowledge or role. So it's to the role that they defer. One of the governance requirements of boards is that the senior independent director leads a review of the chair on an annual basis by chatting to all the other directors and then giving the feedback. Now, when I do evaluation, I invariably do that content and share it with the SID or deputy chairman, if that's the role that's handling it, and give them some of that independent content that they may not have quite gone and got themselves. And then the paper is actually given to the chair, so the chair cannot be fobbed over by the SID, because I will have had the same conversation with the individual. And I was going through the exercise, and the SID was saying, yes, you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right. I said, so these are the things you need to cover when you do your feedback. And he said, no, I won't. I said, why? What's the problem? He says, I'd never say these things to the chair. It's not my duty. I said, it is your duty. It is your role. You need to help the person to be their best. He says, no, I can't do it. I said, well, he's going to be getting it. So it is a conversation you need to then at least support. Because otherwise, how is the individual going to learn to be their best if you're sitting in a circumstance where nobody will tell them?
Absolutely. I mean, I think by nature, human beings are distinctly tribal and hierarchical. As much as we'd like to deny it, we are. And we defer to hierarchy, And so, I like what you'd said sort of right up front, where you sort of turn the hierarchy on its head and how governance works, for instance. So I think the first thing is we're distinctly tribal. If we are distinctly tribal, Michael Owen then explores a concept, a Maori concept, which is called you belong. And it's, I can't pronounce it, it's Wakapapa, I think it is. You belong. And the tribal leader says, you belong.
That empowers,
yes,
empowers them.
Correct. And because you belong, you have the interest of the tribe at heart. And so if you feel something is distinctly going to harm the tribe, you speak out because you belong. And so it goes right back to the culture and the tone the chair sets.
Yes. Tone from the top. How critical is that?
Absolutely. Quite right.
One of the things that I covered in the quotients was digital quotient. Another one I'd like to talk about in a moment is appetite quotient. But let's just talk about digital quotient and link that to, because I know you have experience in this area, and sort of broadening it into a board environment. We have digital, we have transformation. Companies today, entities, organizations, bodies, whatever, are all going through a cultural transformation because things are different now. And they are going through a digital transformation because of age since their digital went in. They have to be transforming if they haven't already done that. And they're transforming from something so archaic and physical to something that's so nebulous and in the cloud, and where you could lock it up in a safe and now anybody can get in. It's just in such a different place. Where do you generally feel leaders and boards are on that comfort zone of transformation culturally and digitally?
Gosh, there is so many places we can go with that.
Okay, so how many more hours have we got?
But I suppose fundamentally, think about the amount of change that has happened in 24 months. And so if you ask me, are boards engaging with a clear understanding of just how much the world has changed? Good old pestle analysis, okay? I don't think so. I don't think so. The narrative pre-pandemic and the narrative post-pandemic and the stories we tell ourselves, are we telling the true story?
Are we learning?
Are we learning? And so the true story is AI is a massive help and a massive worry. The workplace of the future. Hybrid workplaces are so last year. That is so last year. Actually, the fast-paced evolution of work and careers, and particularly in the context of digital transformation, I don't think boards are fully, and I speak broadly here, there are some real excellent examples, but are they engaging in the topic of digital transformation and AI? Because that's where it's at. Now, in the context of social enterprise, which the doctorate is focused on, shared meaning and shared economy is all about digital backbone, transformation backbone, and making it available to all charities, as an example. Corporates will maybe going through the same reflection. In a circular economy, why would you go and redesign something that fundamentally works for everybody else? Well, because we're ego-driven. in our tribes.
Ours is best. Didn't you know?
Of course it is. Of course it is. And so digital transformation is a massive price item on a balance sheet, isn't it?
Mm.
You know, I mean, it's eye-watering when you look at what's being spent. But actually, if boards were able to elevate their thinking and go, well, what does a shared economy and shared meaning look like in digital transformation?
Very interesting concept.
And it's there. You know, it's there. It's just ripe for the picking. Open source code is available. Open source development is there today. But we are so driven by our own agenda and our own bias. And so,
And our own protection.
yes.
And self-belief that ours is best kind of things. We haven't actually learned that tech it's an enabler. It's something that helps us to get things done. It's not a value in itself because it expires tomorrow. It's replaced by something better. Now that cycle of change was very slow 20, 30 years ago. That cycle of change now is daily. And I mean, I just take a very simple example. I created what you today would call an app. And I still think it's a brilliant idea, but I'm sure somebody's done a better one by now. Where you basically had your filing cabinet in the cloud and you had the ability to access anything that you wanted to do. But and then I had another one that was related to setting questions and setting frameworks in a neutral environment. So you had an empty environment. Imagine you've got a spreadsheet. Now you want to decide if you are compliant or not. You write down your couple of points and you rank yourself. This was done in a very, very high-tech environment. And I spoke to a wealth management company in the city who I knew had a major issue. They'd just been given a Section 166 by the regulator. And they needed to show they had done something, but they were rabbits in headlights. I said, I'll tell you what, in less than a week, we can get you 80% along the journey of implementation in a week. No, not interested. Whoever you little blonde is, I'm really not interested. I have got 2 million invested as a starting price and 4 years to get this done. So the regulator's just going to have to wait. The regulator didn't wait. So, you know, life became very, very difficult for the organization. So that mindset, that's a story that totally correlates to what you say, people, their behavior.
Absolutely. And there's, again, to Dubelli's book, Art of Thinking Clearly, there's the construct or the idea of the sunk cost fallacy.
Oh, yes.
And sometimes boards just need to be brave and go, we've done it. It hasn't delivered what we wanted to, change of direction, rather than the sunk cost fallacy, which says, well, actually, we're so far down the road and
we better carry on.
We'll just keep spending money and we'll keep trying to make it work, you know. So, you know, and a board has to be able to elevate its thinking
and actually get rid of that sunk cost fallacy or loss bias as well. And a lovely example was a entity I know that brought out a really innovative app in the pandemic, absolutely designed to really be so supportive of Joe Public in being able to deal with the pandemic. It's still in development stage. It hasn't seen the light of day yet, and they're still wasting money on it. And how many apps got to market in a month? They're now 4 years down, and they still have not got a single return on investment for that spend, and they're still fighting it. Yeah. I had a chat to the risk committee, which is one of our future discussions will be on risk and risk management and risk appetite. So in a collective, as a chair, given all the concerns we've raised about the human at the top of the pyramid of the organization, how do we identify, support, help, assess their risk appetite as it stands? Is it appropriate? And what can we do to help them make it appropriate if it's too out there on the wrong side of the bell curve? Because it could be either left or right.
So if you've got a bad chair, you're stuck. And so boards, you know, in an ideal world, because that's what we're working towards here, isn't it? Your trusts, your trustees would be really intentional about the selection of a chair.
It's so damaging when not right.
It's like the political party you vote for. You know, you kind of get what you deserve there. You know, and that's why, you know, democracy, you know, failing everything else, is a system where you change, you know, and you do an about turn and you go, well, actually that clearly hasn't worked. And so there is something about, you know, boards being really intentional about what it is, how they want to be led. Full stop. You know, but notwithstanding, we're dealing with humans. And so at the heart of this is a human being who's scared of failing.
Always got to treat them humanely. Whenever there's an exit strategy being considered. And it is the elephant in the room that people will not discuss. And I use animal analogies a lot. And the elephant in the room, it's either tiny little one under the table, it's totally wrapped up and you can't see it because it's not really a problem, but it's going to grow. Or it's that big thing looming in the room. And it's having the step up, speak up capability within the collective to deal with some of the very difficult issues, which are 99% of the time to do with people, and then a few other percentages to do with money. I was going to tell a story around that, but now it's disappeared out of my head. I'm obviously thinking of too many things at the same time. But the important aspect for a board, just remembered where my train of thought was going. What we encourage as consultants to boards is after every meeting, you have 3 meetings. Maximum duration, half an hour, in most cases for all 3. First of all, you get rid of all the observers that are in the room, all the extras, and you now have the board directors and the company secretary. And you sit down without pen and paper, without recording. We feel safe. We're amongst mates now. We're not on duty. What worked? What didn't? That's a simple agenda. There's a much bigger agenda I can share. What risks didn't we discuss? Where did the CEO not give us the correct answer? What was the behavior like of that manager of that division when we spoke about their area? Did you notice it? Yeah, the observing, the assessing, the evaluation, the understanding of what actually just happened in the last 2-3 hours. Then the executive directors depart and we have only the non-executives. And same kind of conversation, but it gives a safe environment to talk about the executive and about the worries you have that you can't voice in a boardroom because they're humans and they're present. And that conversation will fail. Whatever happens, it's going to fail. Doesn't matter how you do it. And then the third meeting is the chair leaves the meeting and we have now just the non-executive directors. And we recommend that they rotate the chairing of that meeting each month, or each meeting. So you don't have the same person because some people really battle with this concept. And you rotate the chairing of it. And there you talk about one of the key things is, do we have the right chair? Is the chair working? What can we do to help the chair? How can we make sure that our leadership is improved from where we are? Because everyone can improve. We can always do better than what we're doing. And create an environment where we can engage continuous improvement. And out of those 3 meetings come action points only. You don't go and tell the world what you discussed because the day the crisis hits, sorry, I'm in a room that decides after 20 minutes I've been sitting too still. When the crisis hits, you've got a structure. You can have those meetings. You don't have to terrify the CEO that you're now having a number of meetings with, they're not present. They're used to it. They've been doing it for 2 years. They're quite relaxed about it. It doesn't harm them. Whereas in a crisis, you did that, it would be more harmful almost than not having the conversation. So that's the way we try and help that environment to be humane, to raise the issues, and to deal with the elephants in the room in the right way, instead of it exploding. And then you think, that's a bit of a mess. How are we going to fix this one?
It's absolutely right. And I think it's those are beautiful intervention steps, actually. I've recently attended a meeting where the board meets for 15 minutes before and really reflects on what it wants out of this meeting.
Right.
And the discipline is there that the board packs have been read in advance. We're not debating the detail now, unless you want to draw out the detail, but actually, fundamentally, does it support the strategy, the mission, direction of travel? Yeah. Yeah.
The worry I always have with that is the risk of choreographing it to the point that the meeting doesn't have the discussion. Yeah. And that is training. Yeah. You need to train the individuals to ensure they deliver. But as a closing statement, some wise words from George Woods.
Well, firstly, to say how much I've enjoyed the conversation with you, Sharon. It's been really, really lovely. And it, some conversations give energy to one, don't they? And some don't.
Some don't.
This is energy. And it got me thinking that it's all about energy transferal. The kind of energy you're putting into it, the tone, the culture. Get that right. And you've got a board and an executive that functions and flourishes.
So the opposite of that is a lazy chair.
Absolutely.
Is a disengaged board. Yes. So I like what you've done, because I sort of didn't see it from I've not sort of pictured it from the positive perspective in the way you have, but I have seen and actually served on a board where the chair was probably one of the laziest individuals I'd come across. Body language, preparedness, leadership, chairing, you name it. And that board was never going to go anywhere until they made a change, which they were in process of doing at that point. So I didn't have to survive that for too long. But I see the corollary of what you have just given us. Two leaders of today is find, in a colloquial term, your mojo. Find out what your purpose is. What is your driving mission? Why are you here? And if you're doing it for an ego trip or for money, chairing or being a director is a mistake. You're in the wrong place to start with. So in other words, go somewhere else if that's what you're looking for. But if you're looking to bring value to an organization through your experiences and skills, be in a mode of giving back and taking your learnings to their environments and circumstances. You are not going to be paid well for it. You might be given kudos for it if you get it right. That's what you might get. So taking from what we've just said is find your energy, find your focus, and consistently uplift your board and the learning it can do.
Absolutely. One final thing. One's creating. What are you creating? It's all an act of creation.
Yes, very, very valid. And you don't want to create something you had no intention of creating. Who goes out to create a mess or create ineffectivity or create a board that makes the wrong decisions? That's the last thing we want. Right. As Mandela said, we weren't born bad. We just become it. So boards were not born bad, but we often get the wrong outcome.
And we can remediate.
Very true. It is on the moment that we have expired our welcome together and in front of our guests. Thank you very much to the guests. There were a couple of questions that came through that I built into the conversation that we had with George. So George, thank you very, very much. Call to action we've got on our side is we're doing one of these a month with different guests and covering different topics that are really fundamentally critical to the modern board. How are we going to be modern? How are we going to be comfortable that we are addressing what our businesses need so that we can grow and move forward in the right way for the right reason? So thank you very much. On the slides, you will get the method of how you can get hold of us through the website as well. And we look forward to having contact. And any of you who are interested, the CGI Chartered Governance Institute is running a conference. If any of you are attending on the 5th and 6th of July, Genius has a stand. We're becoming quite known. We've been there a while. And please come and visit us by all means. And if not, make contact if you would like to. So thank you very much. And George, you're awesome. That was really wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed the session too.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Cheerio. Bye.